Yes, so we're going to start the chapter 7 today. And this is the most important section of Bhagavad Gita. Till now, the focus was on the body, right? Focus of Arjun was on the body. Krishna also didn't give details about himself a lot. In 6.47, Krishna begins about detailing about himself, actually. So let's see, where's that? Right, so Krishna actually begins by, Mad Gatinantaratmanaha. Krishna brings that concept, Mad, me. He's a yogi who's always thinking of me. So Krishna brings that out in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Okay? Yogi napi sarvesham mad gatinantaratmanaha. Shraddhavan bhajate yoma ya yogi uttama. So that yogi is the best. So Krishna brought that concept out in the last, and now he's going to expand upon that. That was the Bij mantra. It's one of the main foundational verse for Krishna to expand in the next 6 chapters. Right. So that's where the connection between 6th and 7th chapter is. And in the 6th chapter, just a summary of that, what we did, the acronym was easy. So first, whether he's an enemy, mind, right? It was primarily about mind. So is your mind your enemy or your friend? We looked at the different stages of the mind, whether it's a friend or an enemy. We studied that all the way from Mudha to Niruddha. Then the Ashtanga Yoga concept, which was primarily a big chunk of the chapter. We read about that, heard about it, Yama, Niyama, going all the way to Samadhi. Then the last few verses were Arjun's doubt. So he had two doubts. One, he said that the mind is impossible to control. He said that yeah, I can control the wind, but I cannot control the mind. And then his next doubt was, what happens to those who cannot reach the finish line? And Krishna gives him, Suchinam Srimatam Gehe, Yoga Bhrashta Vijayate. He talked about that. That one who's not able to complete, depending on whether depending on how much effort he or she had invested, he might be born in a family of a he might go up to the heavenly planets, enjoy, and come back, and born in a rich aristocratic family, or he could be born in a family of people who are already focused in bhakti. And lastly, the 46 and 47 was the essence, as Krishna always does. He brings everything back to the fact that it's him. He's the basis of everything. Krishna himself is the basis of everything. That was a summary of the 6th chapter. And let's see what the 7th. Okay, the 7th is divided into 4 parts again, broadly. And hearing, Krishna is everywhere, 4 to 12. And then who rejects and accepts Krishna. And then a description of demigods is also there in here in this chapter. The 7th and 9th are the 2 main chapters where Krishna will talk about demigods and demigod worship. And then going into more details about it. So first 3 verses will be glorifying Krishna. Glorifying Krishna, Krishna knowledge. Then Krishna will describe how he's everywhere, and he will break it down, material, spiritual, and everything, and then how pervasive he is. And then 13 to 19 will be surrender to Krishna. Okay, why surrender? Who doesn't surrender? Who surrenders? Who worship demigods? And why don't we worship Krishna? What's the reason why people don't come to Krishna? So that's the challenge. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so coming to the first section, let's go to the verses. Okay, yes, so coming to the verses. So as I was saying, chapter 1 to 6 emphasis was on Atma Gyan, right? So that's the thing that people are most bewildered with, self-identity, and that's their self-occupation, right? So the first 6 chapters were primarily, it was about karma, right? Krishna gave information about the constitutional nature of everyone, right? How we have to be, we are not a body, we are a soul, and our occupation according to the Varnashrama system, do your duty in the spirit of detachment. So But then we have this big challenge that we can't see ourselves as souls. And the reason is that because my heart is impure. And then how do I get my heart pure? When I come to Nishkam Karma Yoga. So this is the message of first 6 chapters, right? Krishna mentioned about how you do your karma. There was a concept of reciprocation to the universe. Yagyashishthasina santo muchyate sarva kilvisha, that you offer it back. So this is the message of the 6 chapters, right? But still, all that is still in goodness. Okay, so it's not the best yet. It's not. It's on the level of goodness. So, like Socrates, right? Socrates was in a mode of goodness. Right? You can read many famous quotes by Socrates, right? For example, be kind to everyone. Everybody's fighting a hard battle. The only wisdom is to know that you know nothing. Kind of these fancy this. All that is in the mode of goodness. Socrates was in a mode of goodness, but then he also had this inkling about the soul, right? Because he, when he was fed the hemlock, right? If you know his story, he was condemned to die, and he was supposed to die by drinking poison, hemlock. When people came to give him hemlock, he said that first you find me and then kill me. So he had a glimpse of this knowledge, and it was powerful, right? What changes it could make in him. Socrates. After Socrates came Plato. After Plato came Aristotle, the Greek philosophy. So they had this concept. They had this understanding, right? But it was all still in a mode of goodness. They couldn't expand it. But then here Bhagavad Gita is giving us all this knowledge without us having to haggle for it. It's very simply presented to us, thanks to Prabhupada, right? So let's see what the first verse is coming to. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Mai Asakta Manha Partha, Yogam Yunjan Mad Ashraya, Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gyashasi Tashrunu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Okay, so mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Okay, so that's that. So doubt, right? So Krishna is now mentioning that how he's the supreme truth, right? He's the sustaining force behind everything. So now many people have a problem with such verses where Krishna becomes very clear that I'm the supreme truth, surrender to me. So, but when Krishna is speaking of himself, he's being factual. He's not being egocentric. That's the thing here. And people become envious of Krishna or don't appreciate what Krishna is saying because they feel they're always envious of God, right? There is this pervasive sense. Envy is all pervasive, right? Ichha dvesha samuthena dvand mohena bharata. So that's been it comes in the, I think it comes towards the end of 7th chapter, but they say that how it's all pervasive. Envy is all pervasive. So we have this envy towards Krishna because we have not tasted servitude yet, right? So we always get envious of the master. Krishna himself wants to be a servant. That's why he comes as a devotee. So we haven't tasted that, so we want to be a master always. So Krishna is not being egocentric, as I was saying in this particular verse, when he says that surrender to me, right? Without doubt. And so what is the main essence is the thing that Krishna is highlighting here. Hearing is the essence of it, as I was saying in the slides here, that the understanding of Krishna and his energy is obtained through proper hearing, right? So proper hearing. And what is proper hearing? When we hear without doubt. Okay, so doubt now. So doubt, let's talk a bit about doubt. What is doubt? So doubt can be very dangerous. It can be a very dangerous obstacle on the path of devotion, right? If the heart is scorched by doubt, by the heat of that doubt, the nectar of devotion gets evaporated. It gets eliminated out of our heart. So the doubt, it desertifies my heart. Right? And Krishna says this in the 4th chapter, I think 40th verse, right? Agyanas cha shadhadanas cha. That people who doubt, they can find happiness neither in this world nor the next. Obviously, we should doubt. We should try to address our doubts intellectually by consulting learned and realized spiritual teachers. But ultimately, the doubt can only take us to only a distance. It can't take us. It cannot give us the comprehensive understanding of everything, right? So doubt is important, but then we should not take doubt to an extent where we are not able to have faith on Krishna. We're not able to bring Krishna into our lives, right? So we should, right? Many times people doubt scripture. So why should I believe this book? Who knows who has written it? All those kind of things. And Krishna clearly says that, Smat Shastram Pramanam te Karya Karya Vivastito. No, sorry, I'm mistaken. But yeah, Krishna says this in the 16th chapter that people who don't have faith in the Shastras, they can never move ahead in their spiritual path, right? So we should not doubt such scriptures. So doubt is something, it's good, but then we should also know where to end that doubt, right? So that's where the part faith comes in. Right? So when we doubt with faith, then we are able to progress, right? And what does that mean? Doubting with faith means that doubts will keep coming to us. They'll keep coming. They'll try to, because doubt is one way by which Maya fools us, by constantly sending doubts to us. Yeah. And if we keep entertaining them again and again, then our progress will be hindered. Okay. So that is why doubt is a big concern, right? So what we all should do is we should take inventory of what gives us faith in the process of bhakti and practice those things more regularly, right? And what gives us faith will vary from person to person, right? So purpose of bhakti is to make our memory our treasury. All those philosophically convincing spiritual experience we have, we should be ready, we should write them down. They should be a ready resource for us, which we can access readily and then also expand upon them. Then when we are facing any doubt, then we can go back and take inventory of what gives us faith and rely more on that, right? So rather than focusing on our doubts, we reflect on what gives us faith, right? So in the process of bhakti, there will be something that gives us faith and something that challenges our faith. So we should always be conscious of our weakness, but we should focus on the strength. So I'm not saying that forget about the doubts. Always keep those doubts. Okay, these are the doubts, but then also focus on your strengths, right? So it's a sign. Doubting is a sign of intelligence. Srimad Bhagavatam tells us, but then over doubting is a sign of ignorance. It's a thin line between them. So doubting, so free from doubt. So Krishna is highlighting free from doubt. Come to me in full, free from doubt. So doubt is a big obstacle. So we have to come out of that doubt. Yeah. So that's so in this particular verse, Krishna is giving us a more like a reverse order explanation of how to become Madgatinantar Atmana. Right. So where are my slides now? Let's see. Okay. So let's look at this verse, right? So the first verse. So what is the first step Krishna is? So he's starting from the bottom. As I said, it's a reverse. So what is the first step? Hear. Right? Shrinu. Right? So the first step is you hear, as you will see in this verse. Where's that verse? Yeah. So hearing. So hearing, Shrinu. Try to hear. That's the first step of the whole process that Krishna is mentioning. So regularly hearing, we will know Krishna properly. And then the next step is Samagram Mam Yatha Gyasasi. Then we will know Krishna, right? Then we will know Krishna. And Asamsayam. Asamsayam means doubts. All our doubts will go away. Then we will take Ashraya of Krishna. Ashraya of Krishna, right? And Asamsayam with Ashraya, in consciousness of me. And then Asakta Mana. Then our mind will be attached to Krishna. That's what it is. So Yogam Yunjam, and then last one, my Asakta Mana. So then our mind will get attached to. So this is a process Krishna is explaining in a reverse way as to how to connect with him. Right? So starting with the step of Shrinu, hearing. That's the first step that we start the whole process with, right? Shrinu. So let's see the purport, right?
Prabhu, sorry, I missed one. Hear, know the Lord, doubts, consciousness. Can we go back to the slide?
Yes. Which point are you mentioning, Mati?
After doubts, then your consciousness, right? And then what's the top one? Maya, mind.
Right. So my asakta. So my means Krishna. Asakta means attachment. Then we become attached to Krishna. So these steps are going all the way towards the back, starting with Shrinu, and then Asham Shayam, then coming to free from doubts, and then Ashraya, we take shelter of Krishna, Madashraya, and then Yogam Yunjam, right? So Yogam Yunjam means practical action. It's a devotional service. By practicing yoga, Yogam Yunjam means practicing yoga. And then when we do that, so when we do that devotional service, which is actual practical devotional service, then mind will be attached to Krishna. So Krishna is giving the whole concept here for us, right? And if you remember, we read this whole hierarchy in our nectar of instruction. We went all the way from Shraddha to Prema. So in some way, it matches all over here, right? So Shraddha. So where does Shraddha come from? Hearing, right? So when we keep hearing and associating with sadhus, and bhajan kriya is the yogam yunjam part. Then we do physical act, devotional service, and then anartha nivritti happens. So anartha, all our anarthas go away. Then our mind can get attached to Krishna. So when our anartha nivritti goes away, and nishtha, then we become solid in our practice. Then Krishna jumps in. Till anartha nivritti, he's just testing us. Is this person serious coming to me? Really, does he or she want to come to me? So Krishna will look at us. But when the moment he sees that our effort, the eagerness, the sincerity in our effort, then Krishna comes into the picture. Then he comes with a broom and a vacuum cleaner to clean our heart. That's what he does then. So then the nishtha, then ruchi, all that comes in. But then you have to understand that, we have to understand, not you, we all have to understand that bhava, even up to the bhava stage, there is a probability of us falling down. There will be still some anarthas here and there. The example is of Bharat Maharaj. He was on the bhava platform. But then there were some anarthas, a misplaced compassion for a deer, a baby deer, and he fell down. So unless you don't reach prema, unless we don't physically go and see Krishna face to face, there's always a chance of us to fall down. So Vaikuntha, unless we get into the doors of Vaikuntha, there's a chance that we can fall down. So Krishna is explaining this whole process in a very concise, in one verse. That's the brilliance of Krishna, obviously. But yeah, so that's the way to understand this verse, and this is the way we connect it to the steps that we learned in the nectar of instruction.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, so yes, so that's so hearing. So everything begins with hearing. The process of hearing is where everything comes into it. So and I was saying that eagerness. So that eagerness to hear, right? So and I thank you all that you have been showing this eagerness to hear. You come here, it's the middle of the week, you spend 1.5 hours. So you rest assured that none of that will go in vain. It'll never go in vain. This will go a long way. So you will realize the strength of all this hearing, and not just this hearing, you must be doing other hearing also. All that hearing is you'll realize the strength of it when the waves hit you, right? Going back to our original analogy of a ship. So we are strengthening our ship the whole time by this eagerness to hear, right? And when we continue to do that, our ship becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And then when things hit us, it could be anything, envy. It could be somebody hurt me, somebody said something to me. All those things don't affect us anymore, right? So that eagerness means, if I give you a definition of the word eagerness means to be contemplative, to find something that adds value to our Krishna consciousness. Okay, so if you are eager, then even if you have heard
progress.
Right. So, okay. So then if you're eager, then it will lead to our upliftment, right? If the eagerness is missing, then upliftment doesn't happen that easily, because our heart is filled up of many of these six, right? Primarily, kama, lobha, uh, what's that? Lust, anger, greed, um, illusion, pride, and envy, right? So those six things: kam, lobh, moh, mada, matsarya. Okay, yeah. So those are so. And where does eagerness come from? Right? It comes from previous practices. Right? How do you develop eagerness? Somebody can ask you, okay, fine, you're telling me eagerness is important, but then where is that eagerness coming from? So eagerness is coming from our agyat sukriti that we have accumulated over lifetimes. You might see that two people, they're coming from exact same environment. One becomes very much interested and just progresses on bhakti quickly. The other one is always stuck in doubts. Oh, how can I believe what Prabhupada is saying is correct? Or how can I believe what Krishna is saying is correct? Or did you see that guy, oh, this guy speaks so nicely, he's an impersonalist, but he speaks so nicely, I'm attracted to him. All that sort of mind-boggling doubts keep jumping into our mind. We are never able to come to the point of nishtha, of a solidly grounded bhakti process. Right? So that's the biggest challenge we have in bhakti. And that is why I just want to, understanding that, um, that eagerness has to be there, right? And then let's just look at the purport. Prabhupada talks of this in the purport also. Let's see what Prabhupada is saying. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. When we hear sincerely, then our doubts automatically start to vanish. But if I hear with doubts and I always have in mind, oh, I don't think this guy is speaking the truth, then we never even able to progress. Okay, so by practicing of by practice of Krishna conscious yoga, one can know everything in full. Shravanam is the first and most important, hearing, right? So Krishna is telling us, Tachrunu, hear from me. And you will notice that in this chapter, Arjuna doesn't ask any question. So he's demonstrating the quality of hearing, Shrunu. Okay. Now Prabhupada, being that oceanic intelligence of Prabhupada, he's giving us a very clear process as to how do you come to that level of that doubt-free bhakti, okay, that nishtha. And he's quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam all the way, I think, the 17th verse to 21st verse. Yes, first canto, second chapter, verse 17 to verse 21. And he's saying, Shranavatam Sua Katha Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hirdayantasto Havadrani, Vidunoti Suhritsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature or hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself a righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, who's dwelling in everyone's heart, he acts as a well-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Right? So, Shranavata Swa Katha Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtan. Or let me just do one thing. Sorry, give me 1 second. I wanted to open up in the book itself. Let's just open it up in the book. So this is one of the most important parts of Bhagavatam. This set of verses that clears all your doubt. That how do I go from the zero position I am all to the way to strengthening my bhakti? Oh, sorry, 1.2. 1.2. Okay, so let's read these verses quickly. Let me share my screen. Okay, so Prabhupada in that purport, he's giving from the 17th verse. I just want to even take a step back than that and talk about something that where everything starts. Okay, so this is 16th verse. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. So the affinity for hearing is coming from service attitude. So if you look at it really, I cannot, bhakti is going to be given to me, right? A devotee can give you bhakti. A bhakta can give you bhakti. That's the only way it works. But what we can do is we can do service. That's in our hands. That's the only thing that's in our hand, to do service. Okay, so but when we do service, we start to develop an affinity to hear about Krishna. So that's the first step. So service begins. So there is a very conscious choice that we can make. Okay, what do I want to do? Okay, then what happens? Then when we serve devotees, we get an affinity to hear. Then when we hear sincerely, then Krishna sitting in my heart cleanses the desires for material enjoyment from my heart, who has developed the urge to hear his message. Right? So when I develop a sincere urge to hear Krishna's message, then Krishna starts cleaning my heart from within as a super soul. He's a Paramatma, he's sitting there. So that's the next step. First is serving, then my heart, then I get an affinity for hearing. And then again, if somebody can ask you, okay, where do you get the urge to serve others? All that is an accumulation of our previous karma. Many of us, I give you an example. My wife, Shah Bhakti, she tells me that how when she was a child, her parents took her to the Krishna Balram Mandir. She must have been 5 or 6 years old. She went there and she saw the deity of Prabhupada. And she just touched the deity of Prabhupada. She kind of just very humbly, touching the feet of Prabhupada. And just that, it was such a powerful activity that she got such sukriti that eventually she could come to Krishna. She could come to Prabhupada's service. She could come to this whole process. So that was just one example. All of you must have had, in this life or in past lives, we have had this accumulation of sukriti, of piety, that when it gets accumulated, keeps on accumulating, then we get a desire to serve. And then that desire eventually materializes as a desire to hear Krishna's message. Right? And then when that desire to hear comes in, then Krishna from within our heart, he cleans the material desires out. And then what happens? By hearing and rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome in the heart gets destroyed. So all the anartha nivritti happens then, right? And then the personality of Godhead, loving service to the personality of Godhead, is established as an irrevocable fact. Then we come to the stage of nishtha. Okay, so this is nishtha. And then what happens after you develop nishtha? As soon as nishtha is developed, irrevocable service, all modes of passion and ignorance go away. The lust, desire, hankering, everything disappears, right? And then you become completely happy, and we become happy. That is actual happiness. In today's world, what we think happiness is nothing but temporary cessation of misery. When I am not miserable, I think that is happiness. But no, the complete happiness comes after all that has gone away, from all the hankering is gone away. And then what happens when we are in that level of unalloyed goodness? The heart becomes enlivened. Bhava comes into our heart, right? And by contact to devotional service, and then we are liberated. And then last, I think this is 20, and then 21. Knot of the heart is pierced, all the misgivings are cut to pieces, the chain of fruitive action is terminated, and then one sees self as the master. Then we see the Lord sitting in our heart. Okay, so this is the whole process that happens, and that Prabhupada is explaining in that purport that we are reading. So Prabhupada brilliantly gives that detail out to us, that this is the way you progress. This is the way you come to the complete perfection. All the way starting from your sukriti, all that agyat sukriti that have been accumulating, eventually manifests as service to devotees. And then when the service manifests, then your heart becomes, you get a desire to hear. So that's how we reach from that, all the stage from zero to the stage of a devotional practice. And then during that process, we also control our desire consciously. And as I mentioned, we all should take inventory of things that give us faith. So Prabhupada is bringing this section out here, the first verse. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. But if we have that doubt in our hearts, that I don't know if what Krishna is saying is right or not, or what this devotee of Krishna is saying is right or not, then we are never able to progress. Then we are stuck at that level. And I have seen devotees who have been doing, chanting for years, decades actually, but they have not come to a position where they are ready to take initiation. Why? Because those doubts, those things have never let them come out of that fog. They've never been able to come out of it. They've never been able to surrender to a guru. All because those doubts never let them come out of it. The doubt never let them develop that eagerness to take initiation and serve a guru. So that's a big challenge in bhakti. Lots and lots of people go through it, doubting, lack of faith, because they didn't take the first step, which is service. That is why Prabhupada stressed a lot on service. Everybody should do some service. They should have one service fixed for them, whatever it may be, but then you should be constantly meditating on it. How can I do this service? How can I make it better? Even if you're cleaning the toilets, how can I clean it better? Whether I'm distributing books on the street, how can I do that? And we all see that as a tool for our purification. Right? When I do book distribution, it's not that I'm trying to become I become more intelligent by that, or it's something noble. All I'm doing it is for my own purification. Not that I'm giving it to somebody, who I'm blessing somebody with the book. No, it's all for my purification. Because when that purification happens, a desire to hear comes in. So just this first verse is very important. Doubt and hearing. Doubt and hearing. These two factors that Krishna is explaining, Prabhupada is elaborating upon them. They are kind of the fundamental principles of bhakti. If we don't take full note of them, we don't progress in bhakti. We just get stuck somewhere. Okay, coming to the second verse. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshami sheshata yach gyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to be known. Oh, what a powerful statement. Okay, so nothing further to be known. So you all must know about this. Prabhupada brought it out many a times, that in the Bible, it said that Jesus Christ is saying that I have much more to say to you, more than you can bear. I can't tell it to you right now. But then here, a big contrast is Krishna is saying, once I tell you this, you don't need to know anything else. So just imagine that the difference in there. So that's a it's 3. Okay, let's go to the verse back. Yes, so nothing further shall remain to be known. Okay, so once again, stressing on the fact of hearing, right? That hear from me about these details, and then when you hear from me with that eagerness, with that sincerity, nothing else will be left for you to know, right? So so Prabhupada has said this, that everything is revealed to a person in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was saying this in the first verse, right? So it's not like an external attachment is needed. We don't need a spare part. It's already in me. But it's revealed to us, right? All this knowledge is revealed to us, right? So my incompleteness, as Prabhupada says in the Ishopanishads famously, that my incompleteness is due to the incomplete knowledge of the complete absolute, right? If we understand that Krishna is the supreme source, he's my well-wisher, then there is no anxiety left, no fear left, right? Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhirdam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim rachyati. That's how I get peace. That's how Shanti comes in. That's the last verse of the 5th chapter, right? So it's not an external attachment that we need. It's all manifested to me. It's all revealed to me, right? So hearing is the most important part, right? So you must have all heard about Helen Keller, right? So Helen Keller, she once said that how hearing is the most important sense, right? She said that blindness can cut us off from things, but deafness cuts us off from people. So hearing is the most important sense that we have. And actually, when we leave this body, hearing is the last sense that goes off. But all the other senses give us, right? And we also know that, right? I know His Holiness Gaur Govind Swami Maharaj used to say that we don't identify a sadhu by seeing. We identify a sadhu by hearing, right? And so hearing from a bona fide source, as Prabhupada is telling us, is very important. Bona fide source, and by hearing we can understand whether the source is bona fide or not, right? And not Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam. So there are two qualities of a sadhu, right? Two qualities of a sadhu. How do you see that? So when he or she speaks, it affects our heart. So my speech is like a croaking of a frog, right? I'm just saying, blabbering, okay, I'm just speaking. But then just like a rudder moving, right? So, but then when a pure devotee speaks, his words are anointed by the saffron particles from Krishna's feet. There's a verse in the fourth canto, 20th chapter, verse number 25, right? Sa uttam shloka mahan mukhya chuto. So mukhya chuto, that word, the words coming out there, bhavat padam bhoja shudha kananila. So padam bhoja, that they are coming, they have particles from Krishna's lotus feet. When a pure devotee speaks, right? So when that vibration comes out of a pure devotee, then it's anointed by that mercy from Krishna's feet in the form of saffron dust, right? Then a forgetful living entity gradually remembers his or her eternal position. So that's how you identify a sadhu, by hearing him, right? That's one quality that we use to identify a sadhu. And the other is the sadhu's steadiness. You cannot fake steadiness, right? So that's the way you identify. But then, yeah, so it's hearing, right? So then Prabhupada then comes in here, and Prabhupada is highlighting how. So Krishna is talking about both the phenomenal and the numinous knowledge. And Prabhupada is telling us that complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of them. So Jagat, Jiva, and Jagdish. Right? That's the entire concept of Bhagavad Gita. Jagat, Jiva, and Jagdish. That's the way to understand it, right? So generally, Gyan refers to theoretical knowledge, right? And Vigyan refers to experimental knowledge. Here, Prabhupada uses Gyan for phenomenal knowledge, or he's translating Gyan as phenomenal knowledge, right? That refers to things as they appear to us, Pratyaksha. And Vigyan is for nominal knowledge. He's using it, translating it. So which is independent of our sense perception, right? So what Krishna is doing here, he's preparing us for hearing. So what we need when we hear somebody, we need to know the qualities and contributions of the speaker, right? We need to know what that person is going to speak, how is it going to be valuable to us. So it's not an impersonal process, right? So Krishna is now here saying that there's nothing to be known beyond this, right? And I think Prabhupada will bring this out in the purport somewhere. I think it's somewhere. Is it in here? Probably in the next verse, we'll bring it out, where Prabhupada will explain that how. Is it third or fourth? Which verse is that? Sorry, I'm just trying to see if it comes up, or where does it come up, or did I miss that in the first verse? I think it might be the first verse. Let me go back to that and highlight that. There's one thing that Prabhupada says about. Sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting messed up here. I'm not sure where it is, but Prabhupada talks about it somewhere in this section, that how bhakti is very easy if you have faith, but then it's very hard if you don't. So he'll talk about it. I'll when we come to the section, we might hit upon it. I might have highlighted it, right? So okay, so jnana and vijnana, phenomenal knowledge, that is pratyaksh, which we see, and nominal knowledge, vijnana, which is independent of our sense perception, right? So so then correspondingly in the Western world, we have empiric and rational, right? So empiricism refers to direct perception, and rationalization refers to acquired through reasoning. So Krishna will tell everything in principle. So now somebody can ask this question, that Krishna is saying that you will know everything. So nothing, we don't need to know anything. So somebody can who's has that doubting mentality and lacks faith can ask us that, hey, does this mean that this Bhagavad Gita will teach me how to fix my motorcycle? No. So Bhagavad Gita doesn't give the details. It only gives the principles, right? In the 10th chapter, Krishna will come back and say, Krishna will say that in the 10th chapter, that why do you even need to know all this knowledge? Right? It's not possible to tell everything. I'm only telling you a small part of it. So details can be endless. So but then another question. So that's the reason why Krishna is saying that you'll know everything in principle. And Prabhupada has explained it to us, Jagat, Jiva, and Jagdish. So that's the entirety of everything. That has included everything. But then somebody can ask us that, okay, if Bhagavad Gita has everything, then why do we need to study Srimad Bhagavatam? Why do we need to study Chaitanya Charitamrita? So there is a progression that's happening. So the Bhagavad Gita, it gives us Krishna's identity. Okay. It gives us Krishna's identity. He tells us that Mama Ivamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Sanatana. Okay. And then he says that my abode doesn't need any illumination. So he gives details about Goloka. But then Bhagavatam talks about God's activity. Okay. All these pastimes of Krishna and his friends. And then Chaitanya Charitamrita goes even deeper. It talks about God's mentality. Right? So this progression is revealed to us as we dig deeper into the Shastra and become more dependent on Krishna. Right? And Prabhupada is saying here in the purport that complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotees of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Right? So by following, right? He's saying in disciplic succession. So we are following the disciplic succession. So we have to follow, right? So taking a step back. So I was telling you that how the knowledge is complete, right? Then Bhagavad Gita is called a graduate study. So we are reading the same thing, right? So when we are in, like when we do a bachelor's program, so we learn a lot of things. And then we go to masters, it becomes further narrowed down. When we go for a PhD, it becomes further narrowed down. That becomes very specific. So even though the principles are same, but they are becoming more and more refined. So Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's identity; Bhagavatam, Krishna's activity; Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna's mentality. Right? So the progression is revealed to us more and more. So following Krishna, right? So Bhagavad Gita gives us the knowledge in a concise format. Right? It was spoken in a tight situation, right? Not that Krishna and Arjun were on a beach on a long weekend. Yeah. So even for bhakti, Krishna doesn't go in detail. So Bhagavad Gita is a emergency book spoken on a battlefield and on the So Arjun is also not asking for details of the path. He's asking what should he do. Right? You tell me that. So in career counseling, each course is not described exhaustively. Right? So the student has to make the plus and minus. He's to make an intelligent choice. The plus and minus are given. The student makes an intelligent choice. So that's what it means that everything is being given here. So you understand it that way. I just wanted to elaborate upon that. That's a point of confusion for many people. That what does Krishna mean when he says that everything is being given and you don't need anything beyond that? So it's complete because it talks about Jagat, Jiva, and Jagdish. Okay. Let's see if Prabhupada is adding anything else. And then Prabhupada is saying, this is transcendental knowledge. Somebody can even question that, okay, how is the knowledge of this material world transcendental? Okay. The way it is that if we understand everything is connected to Krishna, then this knowledge of the material world can also be transcendental knowledge for us because it is taking us towards transcendence. That's how even the knowledge that is seemingly non-transcendental becomes transcendental. So everything can be used in Krishna's service. We have heard that. Anasaktasya vishayan yatharam upayanjata. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. Everything is in association to Krishna, so every knowledge can be used for that purpose. Okay, so third one is Manushyanam sahasreshu Kashchid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam Kashchin mam veti tatvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Oh, that's interesting here. So 7.3. So now we have talked about this ladder. I've just simplified it here. We have karmis, karmakandis. Then we had sakam karma yogi, nishkam karma yogi, jnani, dhyana, and then bhakti, kevala bhakti, all that. But then if you look at it, so this is the whole process, right? Coming from bhogis, from bhogis to karmis, right? So, and then from karmis, it's going all the way up to bhaktas, right? So first of all, it's a challenge to know what is perfection even, right? So uh, out of 1,000 men, one is trying to attain perfection, Krishna is saying. So first of all, it's very hard to know what perfection is. That is why we need sadhu sangha. We need association. We need teachers to tell us. We need to somebody to direct us in that way. So to come out of that bhogi platform, right? And then why is this knowledge rare, right? Because we all are caught up in that 4 activities, right? Sleeping, eating, mating, defending, right? So that is why we need to follow sadhu, guru, sadhu, and shastra to come to know Krishna. So out of 1,000, so and then I just put in here this is the sorry. This is the part from from Prabhupada's purports in the 3rd canto. This is a very famous verse. Aho bata sau pachato garyan yad jivagre vartate nama tubhyam. Tepus tapas juhu shashnu rarya te nama grananti yete. So Devahuti, Mother Devahuti is speaking to Kapila Muni, and she's saying that people who are chanting your name, ahobata, even if he or she is a dog eater, if the lowest of the class, jivagyavartina, tepus tapast juhuvu shashnu rarya, they become Aryans. They are the highest class of people. And what that means is that, and Prabhupada is highlighting with the section of purport that I brought in, when we are chanting, we should understand when we're chanting. That doesn't mean that just by chanting. Actually, chanting means chanting with some eagerness. Once again, going back to the process of hearing with faith and without doubts, or at least trying to eliminate those doubts. That person has gone through all these steps already. Okay, bhogi, karmi, jnani, yogi, bhakta, and then we have come to the stage of bhakta. That is why we all should be very happy that we have done a major chunk of our journey already. So the part that we have to take the walk, the distance that we have to walk more to reach Krishna is much, much smaller than the distance we have already walked. So we should be very happy with this thought. And so we have already passed all the lower stages. And Prabhupada is saying it very emphatically. Must have already passed all lower stages. Just because we are engaged in chanting to the best of our capacity with sincerity, that means that we have passed out all these stages. So so that's the whole process talking about, right? So out of 1,000 among men, one may endeavor for perfection. So out of thousands and thousands of bhogis, one may try to understand what the whole concept is. Then they come to the concept of karma kanda. They say, okay, there is some religiosity, even though I'm using it for my benefit, there's some religiosity. And then he moves to jnana, dhyana, and he keeps moving. But then even those, there's hardly one who knows that in truth, because we are shrouded so much by this mentality, by this by the doubts, by the lack of faith, by being mesmerized by this material world, by being smeared by this material world. Let's see what Prabhupada is saying here. Okay, and here it is. This is the section I was looking for. I'll find it. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord, Govinda. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachidananda Vigraha, Nadir Adir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotee to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy, as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy, but when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away. And what are the rules and regulations Prabhupada is talking about here? Sincerity. Right? No, there's no, we're not trying to put up a mask, right? So that's what Prabhupada means, right? When we bring our heart into it, the sentiments into it, right? Some me personally say, oh, bhakti is for sentimental people. But those sentiments can be the ornaments also of our life. the bhakti can be enriched, when we have those sentiments purified, then it becomes so much more better. Right? Love is also a sentiment. So if we purify that love, then we are able to relish it to the best of our capacity. Right? So yes, so this was a section which I was thinking about, that how so bhakti is, and I put it there, bhakti is easy because it requires no material qualification. That is why all the jnanis and yogis, they say that, oh no, bhakti is not for intellectuals. This, because the people who practice this kind of, the dhyana, the jnana aspects, for example, the yogis, we read in the last chapter, right? They have a very strict niyama, pranayam, all that. They have to be very strict in their lifestyles. Right? So there's a lot of material aspects involved. But in bhakti, we can only attain the goal by selfless devotion. So there's no material speculation, there's no material formula. In dhyana yoga, we read there's some material formula, yama, niyama, pranayam, dharana, asanas, and all that stuff. But in here, the only qualification that is needed, that we need to have a sincere, selfless heart. That's all is asked for. That is why it seems easy, but it is not easy. It's hard. Okay, I'll take a pause here. If anybody has any thoughts, any comments, any questions on their mind.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So I wanted to understand, how, like, if you take the, like from the 1960s, the hippie era, how do we understand that, so although those who became devotees, apparently out of the blue, they passed through all these stages. It's sort of like incomprehensible that that they would have passed through all these stages, because apparently, prior to joining Krishna consciousness, they were involved in so many like illicit activities, and so so if they had performed all these gone through all these stages, they wouldn't have even gotten to that stage. I mean, they would never have fallen down so much into performing all these illicit activities, and then suddenly joining the Krishna conscious movement. So it's kind of difficult to comprehend that. So just wanted to share that.
Yes, that's a good point you bring out, Pro. You can look at it from two different perspectives, and I'll try to highlight them. One thing is that my qualification is not my own. So somebody can ask me, Premdham, what is your qualification to come to bhakti, to have a guru, to chant, to have mantra diksha, and then I also Gayatri diksha. We have this, so I chant the Gayatri mantra. So I have my spiritual master endowed me with this my Brahmanical thread. Where does all that qualification comes from? Somebody can ask. So as you're saying, right? Where did those hippies have the qualification to come to bhakti? This question was asked to Prabhupada by one of his disciples. His disciple said, Prabhupada, I don't know how did I get this qualification. How did I become so lucky that I could come to you, who's a pure guru, and what was my qualification? And Prabhupada said, you had no qualification. I made your qualification. What I'm trying to highlight by that aspect is that a guru, a pure devotee, has that capacity, the power, the empowerment from Krishna, because he's a Saktavesh avatar, that he can pull anybody out of that material part. Look at Jagai Madhai. They were pulled out from the science and they become so pure that Jagai wanted to, I think Jagai or Madhai, he made a ghat where people would come and wash their feet, and then he became very, and he would ask people to, he was so distressed because he had given so much, hard time to people. He became so soft-hearted. Did he had that qualification? He did not. Mahaprabhu endowed him with that qualification. That's the first aspect to understand, that all our qualifications are not mine. They are given to me mercifully by my guru to me. Otherwise, I have no qualification at all. So similarly, those hippies had no qualification. Prabhupada endowed them with that qualification to come to bhakti. That's one aspect. The second aspect, if you that's from the guru principle. If you look at it from the devotee perspective, so somebody can ask me, okay, Prem Dham, that does mean that you don't have anything to contribute there? No, I also have a contribution. I kept the garden of my heart fertile, so that when the right knowledge comes, immediately the rain of the right knowledge comes, it could immediately fructify, the crops could fructify. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew that there is a vacuum in my heart which I need to fill, and I was looking for many things. Not necessarily away from these material. Initially, they were material, but then they moved from material to transcendental. We started looking for answers. We talked to devotees. Not devotees, we look at different paths. Personally for me, I've been to many paths. Not been to, but I've read about them. Hatha Yoga. I've read about Vivekananda. There's the Ramakrishna mission. I was looking for answers. Devotees were don't look for answers. They're kind of, in one sense, they are tilling their heart. The soil is being, prepared. And when immediately the guru comes, and immediately the bhakti process manifests itself. Why? Because I was sincerely looking for answers. Similarly, the hippies, they were sincerely looking for answers, but they were looking at it in the wrong place. So their desire for an answer was sincere. Desire for the quest for an answer was sincere. But they were looking at it for the wrong place. The moment the guru came, they knew it. The super soul sitting in their heart said, this is the person you want to connect to. And then they immediately surrendered to Prabhupada. So it's not either or, it's both those qualifications. The guru gives the qualification, and the disciple has to be ready to attain that qualification also. And when Prabhupada came, those things immediately came together. And those people who one day were like hippies immediately were elevated because they were ready, and Prabhupada was empowered to give them that. So that's the way to look at it, Prabhu.
Right. So they came in contact with a pure devotee, but
Yes.
but this idea that that the hippies passed through all the 5 stages, that may not necessarily be correct, right?
5 stages. Which 5 stages do you? Oh, you did the bhogi, karmi, all those?
Yeah, because what you're saying is that they came in. Essentially, they came in contact with a pure devotee. They had that mercy, and that's why they were able to, get to the level of Krishna consciousness. But so that's the primary reason. It's not necessarily true that they, had passed through those 5 stages.
Well, Prabhu, as Prabhupada is telling us right here in this here, the purport section I have brought out, anybody who's engaged in the chanting has already passed through all those lower stages. So they had passed through all the lower stages. Because when they started engaging in sincere chanting, they already had passed through all the lower stages.
Okay.
We cannot deny that. Superficially, it might not seem like that. I understand. That is why, as I was mentioning, we don't identify a sadhu by seeing him. We identify a sadhu by hearing sadhus. Many of our spiritual teachers, you see all these. For example, if you see Jayapataka Maharaj, his body is not supporting his body is nowhere in sync with with his transcendental stature that he has. Right? Imagine he's a pure devotee, but then you see he has had a surgery. You can see there's a stitch mark on his forehead, and then he has some problem with his lips, and then he cannot walk, and then he's developed some some skin challenges. But if you look at him from that perspective, you say, oh no, he's not a pure devotee. How can he be a pure devotee? Look at him, look at his body. But when you see what he's doing, when you hear him, what he's doing is beyond imagination. The effect that Jayapataka Maharaj is having on this world is immeasurable. So even though superficially it might not seem that those people have crossed those 5 stages, but down deep in their heart, they have already done that. That's
Okay.
and that is why the verse, if you read this verse, 333:7, I quoted that Devahuti saying, Aho bata saupacha. Saupacha is a dog eater. So technically in Shastras, dog eater is the lowest class of human beings. Right? So ahobata means, oh, what glory is so devotee is glorifying dog eaters. That even though he or she might be a dog eater physically, but he or she has crossed all those stages already and then come to this process of bhakti. Otherwise, we cannot chant bhakti. That is why the steadiness will never be there in chanting if
Right,
we have
right.
already not cleaned our heart of all these other stages, Prabhu.
But so then why were they apparently apparently considered fallen, the hippies, if they had passed through all these stages?
Well, that was more from a social perspective, Prabhu. When the people called them fallen, hippies were not necessarily, they were just revolting against the common conception, the capitalist conception of the country, right? Most of those hippies had rich parents, and they were just so frustrated with that richness that they said, hey, is this all there is? That, you earn money, you cheat others to make yourself happy, and is that all there is? So they moved out of that concept of the capitalism which was prevalent at that time in the 60s, 70s. That is why they were said fallen. Not from
Right.
a bhakti perspective, Prabhu.
Yeah, but the activities that they engaged in, drugs, illicit sex, all those things, those are not characteristics of a jnani, yogi, or a bhakta. And so if one has passed through all these stages, they would not, engage in these activities. I'm just giving you another perspective. So, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
all
no,
right.
I understand your point. Yes, I understand what you're coming from. So, but then as I'm saying, it's superficially we don't identify them. That is why that's the Shastra telling us that superficially even a dog eater might be chanting. You can say, how can a dog eater who's the lowest of the class of people can perform that? But we are not looking at it from a superficial perspective. That's what I was mentioning.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pravesh.
Yeah, sure. Anything else? So if you understand, sorry, just going back to what selection. So uh, I'm trying to think about what you said. So when what the word that verse I'm quoting was from that. So it's that's primarily the statement of wonder of bhakti, right? The capability of bhakti. So the point is that uh, person has acquired by practice of spiritually directed ways, but then due to sins got a body of a swapacha, right? So when a person, so let's say a person who wins a lottery, like $1 billion lottery, so it includes all the lower amounts, but then that also doesn't mean that he has gone back and won $10, $100, $1,000, right? So the supremacy of bhakti is demonstrated when such statements are made, right? Because the path of devotion is the culmination of all the other processes. Therefore, one who is practicing bhakti, one should not think that he's missing out on the other parts or he has missed out on the other parts, right? When you take an elevator and you go to the top floor, let's say, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have seen all the lower floors, but it does mean that you have surpassed all the lower ones. I'm trying to, I'm not sure if I'm making it clearer or more confusing, Prabhu. But then the process of bhakti is a path of mercy, right? So if we just say that, okay, that you only go to the top floor after going through each and every floor. No, that doesn't mean that necessarily. So what I'm trying to highlight is that those people had surpassed those paths. They might or might not have been those, like not necessarily that every single person of the hippies had been a yogi in the past or had been a dhyan yogi in the past. What it means that they have surpassed those paths already. So the supremacy of bhakti is being demonstrated by such statements, right? That's what to understand. I don't know if I made it clearer, any, Prabhu.
No, thank you very much, Pravesh.
Did that make sense more, or was that more confusing?
No, I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it means that, so I think the example helps, right? So when you take an elevator, you skip all the lower floors, you go to the top floor. So in one sense, it doesn't mean you have already seen all the lower floors, but it does mean that you have surpassed all the lower floors. So similarly, when we come to bhakti, have automatically surpassed all the lower ones, because bhakti is all inclusive. It has everything in there. What the Dhyan Yogi will attain, what the Gyan Yogi will attain, what a Bhogi or Karmi will, everything is already included in bhakti. So in that sense, from that perspective, you can say that that person has gone through all of that. So he or she has already surpassed all that. But yes, so I just wanted to, so clarifying that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that person was a Dhyan Yogi in the past or a Gyan Yogi in the past.
Right.
But he or she has already surpassed all the lower ones, right?
Yeah, essentially they came in contact with a pure devotee.
Yeah. So they having, they came in contact with the pure devotee, but then also bhakti is the ultimate purpose of all the yoga practices. So they did surpass all of them automatically when they came to bhakti.
Okay, understood. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from anyone? Any points to bring out? This is the most important section of Bhagavad Gita we are reading. Bhakti is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So
7.3 is also a memorization verse, right?
7.3. I'm not sure. Is it in the list? I don't remember on top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all these verses are memorizing. You can memorize the entire. You can, if somebody's interested in memorizing Bhagavad Gita, start with the chapter 12. That's the smallest, 12 and 15. Only 20 verses in both of them, if you're interested in memorizing.
So it's easier to go from 12 and then.
Sorry.
It's easier if we start with 12 for me.
That's what I did. So I started with 12, then came to 15, both the easiest ones, and then you can go to the harder ones. The harder ones are the first chapter. There are so many names: Yudhanascha, Viratascha, Chekitana, all that fancy names of the those conch shells and all that. First is, and then 10th, then the chapter about universal form is also tough. But yeah, if you're interested in memorizing, 12th and 15 are very good to start with, and they are practically 12th is the essence, the heart of bhakti. So it's also good to know that chapter thoroughly.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, would you please, I know you explained it, but somehow I'm still not very clear. So this one, 7.2, I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenon and numinous. Could you please explain this a little bit more, Prabhu? 7.2, this being known, nothing further shall remain for you to. Phenomenon and numinous. Prabhuji, isko,
So,
can you?
So phenomenal is prataksha, what you can see. Okay. Can you see the slide? Can you see what I'm showing here, the Bhagavad Gita as it is? For some reason, I'm looking at and it says, please move this window away from the shared application. I don't know what's going on there. There's a black box up there.
Yeah, black box is there, but we can
I don't know why that comes. Okay, so you can see it. Okay, so yes, so it's the so phenomenal is pratyaksha. Okay, it's pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means what you can see, right? And then numinous means independent of our sense perception, that we cannot understand. So that is why Prabhupada is translating Gyan as phenomenal. So things as they appear to us. So that's the phenomenal knowledge. That's the knowledge of this world. Okay, I can see a TV, I can see the trees growing, all that is. But then things that are beyond my sense perception. For example, even look at simpler things, right? For example, the purpose of mind is thoughts, right? Thinking. And intelligence is determination, right? We will read that later on. Dhriti, Daksham. So there are some. So, but we don't know how they are working, right? We have no idea. Psychology is supposedly a science of the mind, but even psychologists don't know. They keep speculating. Oh, this is what's happening there. So those things are not. They are independent of our sense perception. We cannot perceive them with our senses. So that's the nominal knowledge. And even if you go to a higher level, so that's the and Krishna will talk about in the 4th verse. He'll come to the explanation. He'll say, what's that? Bhumi rapo nalo vayu khammano buddhi revacha ahankara ityamte. So he will go into those subtleties. But so that's the nominal knowledge. And even you go to the next level, God, the concept of God, the concept of spirituality, all that is not perceived by these senses that we have. So that comes to the nominal part, right? So that's the nominal, that's Vijnana. But the challenge, as I was saying, these both things, we will not be able to grasp them if we don't have that faith. That is why Krishna, in the first verse immediately, he brings about Shrinu, hear from me. And that hearing has to be with faith and, without doubts. Otherwise, these things don't open up to us. Right. So what happens is, as you also must have realized it, you've been practicing bhakti, that when we move forward on the path, the fog that we are entrapped in kinds of starts to reduce. Right. Things become clearer to me. I see Krishna's hand in my day-to-day activities, in things that are happening to me. It's something that you very consciously do it. So those are independent of my sense perception. But just because I'm doing it with faith and with sincerity, Krishna is giving me that knowledge also of the nominal aspect of this life, of this world. So that's the other aspect, right? Did that make sense? Okay.
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Yeah. And we, I think this. Sorry, go ahead, Prabhu. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Prabhu. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead, Prabhu.
Prabhu, so looking at the bhakti level or the different levels, I guess it's okay if we have doubts no matter what level we're on.
Doubts are okay. Yes, doubts are not a problem, Prabhu. So doubts are never a problem as long as we have that faith that coming along with the doubts. Okay, that's the important part. I know I've been repeatedly highlighting it because it's very important for me and I've been through that. So doubt without faith is very dangerous for our bhakti process, right? So, and then as I was mentioning, anartha nivritti, what does anartha nivritti mean, right? Anartha is one of them. Anartha is doubts in our heart. So anartha nivritti keeps happening. It's a more pervasive process. A time will come where that anarthas would have reduced to an extent where you are able to solidly have a strong ground. But then those anarthas can even come up when we are in the bhava stage. So similarly, what I mean to highlight is that doubt can come at other stages also in the process of bhakti. But what you would have done as you were growing in that process of bhakti, you have strengthened yourself enough that when doubts come, you don't succumb to them. That's it. Similarly, like I remember I was hearing to my spiritual teacher, and he was saying that somebody was asking that, do pure devotees also get, these negative thoughts in their minds, lusty desires in their mind? And he said, yes, they get them, but they don't succumb to them. They just let them pass by. They see them as a wave coming and then the wave goes by. So similarly, doubts also come to everybody, but the purer a devotee gets, the less he or she is impacted by it. Does that make sense, bro?
Yes, Prabhu. So I guess it diminishes as your bhakti becomes stronger.
Yes, it diminishes. Yeah. And your faith will grow, right? For example, I'll give you an example. Yeah, okay. For example, landing on the moon, right? So some people would say, hey, Prabhupada doubted. Prabhupada said man didn't land on moon, and here is proof that then. So they lose faith on Prabhupada. But as a devotee, as our bhakti gets stronger and stronger, you can come to an understanding, why did Prabhupada say that? Because he knew that his disciples were too much materialistic, and they were so engaged in that concept of the man going to moon, and they were so, oh, my country. Prabhupada had to dismantle that concept. So he went ahead and said that. So now that understanding has come to me, even though there was a doubt, but whatever little strength I have in my bhakti has helped me overcome it. Well, that's just an example I wanted to give here. There are other such concepts also which Prabhupada says which are controversial. But as our bhakti grows, our doubts go away. And even if they're there, they don't shake us from our bhakti, from the position we have attained in our bhakti.
Thank you.
Your voice was breaking, Prabhu, but I think you were just kind of, you're not asking anything, right? Okay, so yeah. Any more things here?
Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Sankirtan, Prabhu.
Yeah. When you say certain things like, how Prabhupada says certain things. Can you see me?
I can hear you, Prabhu.
Yeah, when Prabhupada says certain things, he says a lot of things in the books that are controversial or so far away from our conditioning.
Yes.
And so sometimes devotees get the tendency or the desire, well, we got to take those out of the books, or we don't want to talk about this.
Yeah.
But the real reality is one should understand what Prabhupada has given us, and then study to the degree that we can defend it and understand it. So that doesn't mean you get on a soapbox and beat people with a stick.
Yeah.
But what happens, it means that within yourself, what he has said, I know it's not possible. What he has said, I can accept from what? Realization within yourself. I mean, so many things, and you just have to, and hopefully, if you do realize it and you have people that are not so immature, or you can get in an area of communication, you can actually bring them out of that sense of ignorance too. Not sometimes on a public platform, that's not as practical. But there's a happiness and a confidence as you learn to realize what Prabhupada said, And if you don't let it disturb you, because in time you'll come to realize exactly, it will be revealed, and you'll see that progress in your life too. And I was thinking too, when you were talking a minute ago, there's no loss or diminution on this path. And if you get to a certain position on this path, and I see two different points. Like, one point is, what did those gopis do what pious activity did they do to get to this point in their life? What actions did they do? So certain points, we want to feel like it has to be something that you've actually done and earned. And I think there's a level of that everywhere. Like Prabhu was saying, well, how in the heck could they all of this, how did they get from the first floor to the 10th floor without following the normal path? Well, isn't this, if we call it a science, right? Then what happens in science if you get a catalyst?
Yeah.
What does that do? It takes you from 0 to 100 by its influence. And in this science, that catalyst, this is a science. It's about energy. This is the energy of the Supreme, and the different levels of the energy and the manifestations of that Supreme energy. But at the same time, if one who is carrying that energy, and he's a catalyst, you're going from 1 to 100. You did have a predisposition. So super soul says, oh, you do have a predisposition. You haven't done all those things. You haven't followed ecology all this time. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. Look at all your activities. I mean, but because you have that desire, you get something called causeless mercy.
Yeah.
You can't. What caused it? Nothing caused it. He loves you so much. He's caring and sharing so much that he like they say in the Bible, he gave his only begotten.
Yeah.
What is this gift? Prabhupada came on a mission. What he was just telling me today. Oh, Prabhu, he said, if I wouldn't have learned from you this, I would have been lost. I said, this is the gift of Srila Prabhupada. This is the real. This is the real gift. It's not the sentiment of a sweet man coming and talking nicely, but it's the depth of the knowledge that he's come. And if you take that, that's where I've given them everything. What more do they want? Prabhupada said, give me your mercy, Prabhupada. Oh, there can't be any heavier mercy than if he was told to come here and deliver something. So let's analyze what he came, what was the mercy that he gave us, and what was he sent to do? The books. These books for the next 10,000 years are the gift of the potency of Mahaprabhu. It's the mentality of Mahaprabhu that he's given us. That's what we want. So, here's another thing. It says here, both nominal and phenomenal, no other knowledge is. Let's stop for a minute with that statement. Knowledge, okay? We think you need this, you need that, you need this. No, that's such a mundane, low, petty thought. You must erase, check the ego at the door. Not only the ego, false ego, mentality, and previous conditioning. Check it all at the door and say, okay, what you got, Krishna? And Krishna says, I got all you need to know, and that's it. Okay, so what are you moaning and groaning about all the other things? They're just like an obstacle or a diversion.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And it's disguised in some way or another. Let's just stop for a minute and just think. Well, finally, I got here to someone who is called the Absolute. So nothing beats it. So what has he got to say? So once again, you're saying, the faith. You have to have faith. If Krishna is telling us, the head CEO comes and he tells us time and again, this is all you need to know. Stop. That's all I need to know. I don't have to be as smart as Premadam and have a PhD in chemistry to get this nectar in life. That's not it.
Yeah, that's true.
There's certain qualifications we could have in life so that we can participate in life, because this material world we have to work somehow. So whatever comes by that is fine. But if we can stop just at the window of peering into, okay, here I am with the absolute truth. What's he really got to say? What's he giving me? This is the exciting point. Like, there's nothing else to know. Okay, and let me know what you're giving here. Just try to know what he's giving and see what happens. Because if this is, once again, it's a scientific experiment. So you've got to follow the path. You got to follow and take all the knowledge that's giving, or the parts to the equation. You got to take those parts and don't add anything else. Just take those parts, and that's it. So this is a scientific. This, every time I turn around, this was the curse that caught me in Krishna consciousness. Is finally I realized, what are you talking about, Krishna? And I have sold this science of yoga to the sun god. I've told this science. And we see the beginning of the science is what? The difference between spirit and matter. Second chapter. Now let's keep going with this science. Every time we turn around, this is the science. See what leads up to the science. And when you get into that habit too, it just makes so much clear sense. That this terminology, the words he uses when he says KC, Krishna consciousness, there's a whole book of definitions that bring this to a potent statement, and the same thing, when you say science, it is a potent book of statements that lead up to this. So these devotees, when they ask you to explain something, this is what they're doing. They're on this path, of getting the science. When I hear these people thinking, guess what happens to me? I start thinking. I start going deep. I start thinking what they're doing. I had so many things to think about in this last few minutes because of those two devotees. That's really wonderful. And Gopal, I mean, this is wonderful.
Yes, it is wonderful.
And this is what we do. I'm really happy that we get time to sit and do this.
Yep.
And I can't write fast enough. This is upsetting me. But I'm really thankful for everybody participating, because this is where the blessing comes, and I thank you all. Thank you.
No, you brought out a very good point, Prabhu. To just have that simple faith in the descriptions given by the Acharya, that's a qualification that as a disciple, our disciple has. Now, I, as a grand disciple of Prabhupada, my qualification is that I'm just sincere in what I have faith in what Krishna Prabhupada is saying. And I meet people all the time who doubt what Prabhupada is saying, and then they never make any progress. They actually go downhill, and you can't do anything about it. Everybody's having their baggage of karma. But if we have that simple faith in the descriptions that Prabhupada is giving us, Krishna is talking, that's more than enough as a qualification for us to go back home, back to Godhead. Just that sincerity, that's all. So yes, thank you for expanding upon that, Prabhu. Getting rid of that doubt is important. We should have doubts, we should ask them, but then with faith. Okay, so we'll wrap up here. You can